Well, you have to transition to telling me about that first trip to Paris and London and all that.
Oh, yeah. That was pretty comic. We decided to go in the middle of the winter. Lord knows why. I guess we didn't have jobs, so we were going to scheduled to arrive, maybe the 23rd or 24th. And we went to London, and we were dressed somewhat unusually. They took one look at us and said, "How much money have you got with?" and all kinds of other questions. Then they looked at Franklin. They said, "We think you're a draft dodger and you're trying to immigrate to London. You got too much money with, you don't have a round-trip ticket, blah, 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 blah. We're going to send you back to the U.S."
Whoa.
So they put us in detention overnight. But oddly enough, the fact that we didn't have a round-trip ticket saved us, because they said, "You came on BOAC, we'll have to pay for your way all the way back to New York." And so I said, "Well, we'll pay another $100 or whatever it is, just send us to Paris." And they kind of grumbled. He said, "Well, okay, we'll send you to Paris." And then, as we walked through Heathrow Airport, and we had all kinds of people, I'm sure this happens today, but back then it didn't. We had all kinds of people carrying our baggage and watching us. So we were actually a little entourage. Everyone thought, since we were unusually dressed with the entourage, we had to be rock musicians. So they held the plane for us out on the airfield, and they actually pushed up some stairs like they do in the 40s movies. And they put us on the plane, and they sat us down. And then the fellow from the authority there handed our passports to the stewardess, and he said, "Don't give them their passports until you're off the ground." And everybody in the plane turned to look at us. What are they going to do, jump out the windows at this point? But when we got to Paris, we had no problem. And it was a remarkable chance encounter that we did not know about. There was a surrealist exhibition devoted to Charles Fourier that had really just started a couple of days before. And so we made it just for that exhibition. If we'd come maybe 2 months later, we would have missed it. And in fact, 2 months later, Breton was already having health problems, so we might have missed a lot of him. As it was, we only met a very few times, but it was really wonderful.
Well, wait, did you speak French? Did he speak English? How did that hurdle get overcome?
It's one of those intellectual things that are so unusual, and it happened with Guy Debord, too. If you speak slow, careful English, they understand you. They will speak slow, careful French. You'll understand them. Breton and Debord were both very careful speakers. They didn't speak too quickly or too slowly, and they were very patient. And so we had the funny experience of them speaking in French and us speaking in English, and it working fine. Now, if there were 5 people around the table, it didn't work. Because it was just too hard to keep up. But 1-to-1, it would be good. And of course, Breton spent time in New York.
Oh, right.
And I'm sure he understood English pretty well, but he just didn't feel he could speak it well and didn't want to do something silly or make a mistake. People can be sensitive that way. I know I made plenty of them.
Wait, you met Debord on the same trip?
Yes, the same trip. Slightly later, we went into a bookstore called La Vieille Taupe, the Old Mole, and there was the address to revolutionaries of all countries that the Situationists had put out in about 4 or 5 languages. And so I took that back to the hotel room. I was there first because Franklin sometimes wasn't feeling too well, so he was home that day. But I took it back, and we were really excited by that declaration. So the first chance we got, we went back to the bookstore, and they had published a couple of issues of their journal at least. And we got those. And then through the bookstore owner, he told us how to get in touch with them, which we did. And we met at a cafe. So, had a nice long conversation. But we really, the Situationists, I think, would have liked to have recruited us because at that time they didn't have any representatives in the U.S. But they didn't want us to be both surrealists and situationists because they had questions about the validity of art and a few other things. So, but we got along fine with Debord. He mentioned that he did admire surrealism and that if it had been maybe 20 years earlier, he would have just joined the surrealist group. But at this point, he thought it was really finished. And, well, they were making their own contribution in a different direction, so you can't really complain. What they did was good.
Well, I didn't even know about situationism until much later.